life doesn't stop when the workday ends. On True HR Beyond the Office, Shannon Clark Johnston tackles topics that affect our lives in and out of the workplace, with conversations on mental health, reinvention, self-empowerment, and more. We share actionable insights to inspire meaningful growth. Join us for candid insights and guidance to help you build resilience, create balance, and thrive with confidence in all areas of your life.
So we're flipping the script today.
Yes, we are.
Yes. So welcome to True HR Beyond the Office. I'm Nikki Gangemi, and today I have the honor of introducing someone whose mission is redefining how we think about confidence, connection, and leadership. She's a speaker, coach, trainer, and founder of True HR, Shannon Clark Johnston. Shannon brings over 25 years of experience as a business executive and HR leader, but her work goes far beyond corporate offices. In this episode, we're diving into her story, how she got here, the values that drive her work, and how she's helping people navigate the personal side of professional success. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you, Nikki. This is weird.
It's interesting.
Weird and fun, you know.
We are.
Weird and fun, but it is definitely a different feeling to be the guest.
To be on this
And you
side.
know how it feels because you've been a very frequent guest.
And this feels very different from me, but I like it.
But look at us. We're building
Look at us.
confidence by doing things
That's right.
we don't usually do.
We're expanding beyond our comfort zones and what we know.
That is correct.
And that's what it's
That's
about,
what we do.
right? That's how confidence is built. So your career spans more than 2 decades.
I was extremely young when I started.
When you began.
Right.
That was going to be my next
Oh, absolutely.
sentence.
I was
Yes.
about 7.
Yes, you were a child. And that career was in HR, business, and career leadership.
Yeah.
So can you take us back to the beginning and what drew you to this field?
So, yeah, that's a very good question. When I was in college, which, you know, this will date me a little, but it is what it is. There really wasn't a human resources degree. That didn't exist. If it did, it was not widely known. And so, and I think, in fact, having been through the college search with my son and seeing how many majors some of these colleges offer, it was totally different. I mean, there just weren't that many, and so I gravitated to psychology, and I initially didn't know what I wanted to major in. I was just in college, like a lot of freshmen, and I think I took one or two courses in psychology. Really liked it. Sophomore year, I said to my parents, you know, I think I'm going to major in psychology, and they said, "What are you going to do with that?" As parents do. So I said, honestly, I don't know, but I like it and I'd like to graduate. So why don't we go with that? And so we did that. And then as I got towards the end of my undergraduate degree, I was really getting interested in school psychology. So I started graduate school to be a school psychologist. I started right away at the college I graduated from into that program. And about halfway through that program, first semester, I was in a class, and we were role-playing counseling. And I was the, therapist, and my classmate was really supposed to be drilling me with, really being a difficult, client. And I was in the middle of the exercise, and in my head, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't like it. I knew she was supposed to be difficult, but I thought, I don't really want to sit in an office and just sort of wait for people to come to me in that setting. And it was just sort of frustrating to me. I wanted to have something where I could be more proactive. So, I learned more about, I left that role, and I went to a customer service role. I worked for Prudential. At the time, I was a temp. I was in their property and casualty division, which does not even exist anymore. And so I was answering phones about questions people had about their auto and homeowners insurance. It was as glamorous as you would think, Nikki. It was it was a customer service job. And So I really didn't really have a complete direction. I learned about HR. I wanted to get into HR. It was very difficult to find a job that didn't require experience. And so finally a job posting came up in the organization, and I posted for that in Newark at the corporate office. And it was a benefits position, and that's where I started my HR career. So, I really loved my time at Prudential. I was there for 13 years, and it gave me the ability to try different things without really having to leave the company. So I was in labor relations. I trained on product tax compliance issues. It was as exciting as it sounds. No offense to those of you who like tax compliance, but it was an opportunity to get involved in training, and eventually I landed as a trainer in the retirement division, and worked my way up to manage that group, and then got into leadership development towards the end of my time there. So it just gave me this opportunity to try out different things without, let's say, job hopping at that time. So it was a really nice way to kind of learn best practices from a really solid company, and figure out what aspect of HR I liked.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were flexible, you were open-minded, and you just it sounds like you looked at the positive aspects and thought, let me just learn and grow and see where things take me.
Yeah, and I honestly never, ultimately after there, I left and went to another company for 10 years, which led me to just learn more and more and more about HR. And for those of you that are in HR, and those of you that aren't, I'll tell you that there's a big difference between someone who works in compensation and human resources, or works in employee relations, works in benefits. I mean, the skill sets are widely different. So I really didn't know what part of it I fit in the best. And so once I found training, I really loved that. But then it was limiting at a certain point. And so to your point, I did have to sort of be open to something different, even though I loved training. So then I started taking on more and more responsibilities, and then ultimately ended up as the chief human resources officer for the second organization. So it was really just in retrospect. I don't know if I did not have a grand plan. I did not say, I must become, the head of HR. But I just kept learning and trying out different things. And, honestly, when my boss at one point said to me, do you want to try something besides training? I want to give you benefits and recruitment. And I was like, not really. And I went home and I thought about it, and I was like, what are you doing? Why not? Give it a shot. And, and so that's really how the HR career evolved.
How it evolved. And it certainly wasn't linear, like most careers. They don't take that linear path. What challenges have you faced along your journey, and how did they shape the work that you do today?
Yeah, everybody has challenges, right? Whatever career path you choose. And I think I'd have to look at those challenges maybe through different lenses in terms of the time in my career. So like early career, for example, was really just trying to break into HR. Again, it was really hard to find someone who would take a chance and someone who had customer service training, right? Entry-level roles, at least at that point in time, they really weren't plentiful. To get in with a good organization was difficult. So I think it was having the perseverance, as you say, and, did I want to work in customer service? No, I did not. God bless everyone who does. We need you. But
Yes.
After a while, I wanted to build that HR career. So it had to kind of bide my time. But I remember at the time thinking the show Friends was really popular.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this is not like Friends.
I love that show.
My life is not like Friends. Why don't I have a huge apartment?
That's right.
Work is work. Work is hard sometimes, right? That the daily in and out. So the challenge, I would say, at that point in my career was just keeping the faith, like you say, staying positive, generally speaking. Everybody has their moments, but trying to find that break. And, for me, it worked because it was a large company where there were options, and so if you're in that part of your career and you're trying to, break out or break into something, try and build out those options, whether it's through a large company or just seeking out a lot of job opportunity, because that can be discouraging, So that was definitely a challenge. I would say, mid-career, I was probably taking on my first management responsibility when I became the manager of the training group at Prudential in the retirement division, as I mentioned. And that was super exciting for me. Also painful, as anybody knows who's a manager of people. It's a skill that you really have to work at building. And I am a much different, hopefully better manager and leader now than I was, like most people.
Right.
Your
I'm
first
sure.
job.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
managing
you
other
learn
people.
as you go and evolve.
I mean, that was so, it was like exciting for a minute, and then you're like, oh, I really have to manage people, and everybody's different, and not everybody's responding to the same kind of coaching and managing. So that was difficult, and then there was a bit of a monkey wrench thrown in at that point. We all have personal lives and things that go on personally, and so for me, I had an illness at that time in my life, and it was kind of a unique one. I have not won the lottery, but I definitely got a weird illness, something called transverse myelitis. And what that meant for me was that within 24 hours, I was perfectly healthy, went home, and within 24 hours, I couldn't walk.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I was very healthy otherwise, and I, certainly went to the hospital. I needed to figure out what's going on, because a healthy, 30-year-old suddenly can't walk. That's concerning. So through a lot of tests and days, they ultimately found out it was transverse myelitis, which really just means it's your immune system sort of attacks itself and inflames the lining of your spinal cord and compresses. Wow. And it can be caused by a lot of different things. It can be caused by things like multiple sclerosis or lupus. For me, they determined it was a cold. It was a flu,
Wow.
a flu that I'd had a few weeks prior that sort of my body, for whatever reason, overreacted to. So it was a kind of random, but it meant years of therapy. I did learn to walk fairly quickly again, and moved to a walker and then to a cane and so forth within some months. And I was really lucky, unlike a lot of people, that have that. So it was sort of this situation where I had just bought my first home with my husband at the time. I had just been promoted. My career's, sort of taking off in my mind. And within 24 hours, I was in this situation. And I had never been to a hospital a day in my life other than the day I was born. So to say that was a challenge is an understatement, but I really have to say that from a work perspective, the company was really good to me. And allowed me to work back slowly. And I loved training so much, and it took a lot out of me to actually give a class at that point. I'm going to get choked up about it. But I really wanted to be back. I wanted things, I think, to be normal. And so I did everything I could to get back, and I got back to my job to a part-time extent within a really months. I probably shouldn't have been there
Yeah.
that soon, but it really meant a lot to me. So, you go through something like that, I think that it definitely puts things in perspective, but also for me, it made me, cling a lot to the routine of my life, the things that I knew, which was my work, my family, my friends, all of that. So it was a challenge. I worked through it, and then I really didn't talk about it that much, because I wanted to be quote unquote normal. And then kind of now in the rearview mirror, I see all of the lessons. There's a lot of the work I do now, speaking, training, coaching, relates to resilience and kind of working your way out of adversity, because it is a part of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you handled it very gracefully.
I hope so. I think so. I think you never really know until you're in that situation. I mean, it was just crazy. Like when I think about, that happening in such a short period of time, but I think we all have that capability in us. I think resilience and competence are interconnected, and they're skills that you can build. And so it's kind of my mission to help people build those skills even when you're not, struck with some mysterious illness, just because life brings all kinds of adversity. I mean, it could be like a divorce or losing your job or what have you. And so there are ways to work through it. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was not easy. There's a lot that happens when you have a spinal cord injury that isn't pretty. And, but I think it certainly helped me form, in terms of work, a more of an empathetic mindset and understanding of you just kind of like never know what people are going through.
That's right. So that's how it helped you in your work today.
I think so, yeah.
What would you say your resilience that you had and your ability to stay focused forward, did that come natural to you, or what did you draw upon to keep you moving forward and staying positive despite the challenges that you were experiencing?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think it's important to have a strong network, right? A strong support system. And so I did have people that cared about me, that helped take me to and from physical therapy, or helped me clean my house, or things where I needed help. I had friends and family to do that. And so that's important. I think another thing I talk a lot about is keeping a positive mindset. Sounds really easy, but sometimes we sabotage ourselves. So we want to keep a positive mindset. Let me go doom scroll on my phone, or I'm going to go watch a movie that's going to make me cry, or I'm going to go be around people that are really kind of annoying. Really make an effort. I mean, surround yourself with positive people, positive things. I also tried to keep a really positive environment. So for me, that means clean spaces and organized spaces. Making sure that I paid attention to, the way in which I was living, eating right, and just kind of really trying to make good choices. And all those things seem really basic, but when you're in a difficult situation, it's sort of like, why are you sabotaging yourself? And I know a lot of people do that. In fact, one of the stories that I've often told about this time was these two therapists, one an occupational therapist, one a physical therapist in the hospital. They offered to work with me one-on-one after I was released. It was really unusual, but they knew that my insurance company at the time had not agreed to pay for inpatient services for me. That's a whole other podcast, but they didn't. And so they offered to work with me, and but they sat me down before they were going to do it, and they said, you've got to show up every day. Like, you got to show up, Shannon, because we're going to do this. And I'm like, looking at them like, why wouldn't I show? I cannot walk. What are you talking about? I'm not going to show up. And they said, well, a lot of people, they give up. They get so discouraged, and we see it all the time. So mentally, if you're not there, you're not going to be able to physically do what we need you to do. And so I think, as much as we go, well, of course you went, you wanted to watch, that a lot of people can be really pulled down by it. By
that, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's important to build all of the sort of structure you need for resilience, everything from self-care to the network, like I talked about, all those things, all the time, right? Like, don't wait for the time where, you're in a difficult situation and you need help. I mean, it's kind of like, I would equate it to professional networking. Don't just go out and start networking when you need a job, right? Because then it feels kind of weird and gross. Build your network while you're doing great, and you can help other people.
And maintain those relationships. So it's just natural. If you need help, you can ask.
Exactly. So it's really about paying attention to those things. And I think, look, there's so many lessons learned from that experience for me, and probably thoughts on why. Like how that kind of happened. I was very much sort of focused on my career. I was very focused on everything being just right. Had that kind of perfectionism, and so I struggle with it a little, but it puts everything into perspective when you have something like that happen, where you're like, okay, is it really? If it's a day you're walking, Shannon, it's probably a pretty good day, right? So I feel actually lucky that I had an experience like that. Yeah, because I think it really, at a fairly young age, it grounded me in a way that might not have happened. Yeah,
it's interesting how it doesn't appear on the surface that would be something that is working out in your favor, And yet at the same time it did. It taught you so many lessons, even letting go of perfectionism, which is something that many people struggle with.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, you know, I'm one of those people. I know it sounds maybe sort of pat and like everything does happen for a reason. You know, I do feel that way. And I think that there are a lot of reasons that probably happened in my life. And yeah, so I think even bad experiences can be good if you learn from them.
Exactly.
And that can be hard. And I will tell you, like, it's not like I learned all these things right away and I popped out of the hospital like so enlightened, like,
Right.
you know, like a Hallmark movie or something. It did not happen that way. And I think a lot of sort of motivational speakers and coaches and things, they give you that impression, and it's not like that. You know, there were a lot of days of crying, lots of crying, and small steps, literally and figuratively, right? Like it was a lot of small little steps back to feeling like myself, or like my kind of new self after that. You know, reinvention and all of that is not always this big thing. It can take time and be hard work. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you embody resilience and perseverance, and just keeping that positive mindset where you're focused forward on what can you do with whatever situation that you're in.
That you have. Yeah.
So it makes you perfect for what you do today.
Well, and you know,
to help others.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think a lot of people say this is the sort of foundational piece of what I think and what I talk about, which people will wait and say, well, once I feel confident, you know, I'll do this. Once I feel confident, I'll do that. And the irony in that is that the confidence comes from taking action.
Yep.
Right? So if we take no action, you don't feel the confidence, you don't feel the feeling of resilience back from what? Because you haven't taken the step. And it could be, and you know, I know you and I have talked about this before. I mean, it could be big steps, little steps, it doesn't matter. It's literally you have to take some action, right?
Right. You just gotta keep moving forward. That constant and never-ending improvement.
Right.
Just keep moving.
Absolutely.
And recalculating as you go along.
Yeah, because I think social media these days, people, some personalities that are, you know, the hot, you know, speaker, talker, whatever, it's like they can make it appear so easy, and then we feel that we're not at that level because but then you find out the real backstory of someone, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know. So I think that's, you know, you have to run your own race and
You do.
really do what's right for you.
Yeah. I think when you maintain the mindset that you are only competing against yourself and just being a better version of you.
You're right. Exactly.
That's
and
all.
that can be hard. There's no question about it, because we're so bombarded. And you know, if we're at work and we see somebody, we only know, I think, a lot of times just part of the story. We don't know, so there's no point in really making these. You know, it's funny. I had an experience when I was recovering, and I had a temporary hang tag, handicap hang tag for my car, and I was struggling with identifying with this whole experience. You know, I'm not a sick person and all this, so I didn't want to use it. And I went to my neurologist for like a checkup, and I told her that, and she's like, "What is wrong with you?" You know, the thing is, Shannon, if you want to go to the food store and you don't use your hang tag, by the time you get in the food store, you've already like depleted some of the tank you have, and you don't have as much as you used to right now. So use it. So she talks me into using it. So I go to Target one day, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to use it. I'm going to do what I'm told. They put my hang tag there. And I looked very similar, I mean, younger, but very similar to how I look now. Like I didn't have a lot of visible, as I started to get away from using my cane at that point, you know, you certainly couldn't necessarily tell, right, there was something wrong with me. And I got out of the car, and this gentleman starts yelling at me.
Really?
You know, that's handicapped, that's it. And I just pointed to my tag, and then he kind of went like, and that was like sort of mind-blowing for me, because it just speaks to this, we just never know, right? Like we don't know what someone else has going. We don't know what their background is. And, you know, I'm sure you've had this before, where you speak and people go, oh my gosh, like you just must have so much confidence, and that's just, probably just comes so naturally to you. And yeah, okay, maybe you have an affinity for it, but people don't see you practicing in your car, practicing talking to yourself, right?
Exactly.
So,
yes. And where I came from,
right.
Back in teenager and early 20s.
Exactly.
Yeah, they just see today. It's like the moment in time, even
That's
the things that we see on social media, like the happy family, like that's a second when the camera took the picture.
That's right.
What's the rest of the story?
That's exactly right. And so if we sit in these stories all the time, you can drive yourself crazy.
Yes.
But really none of it's real.
Right. That's why we got to look at our lives, our own lives and our own self.
That's right.
And what can we do with where we stand.
Exactly. And just take that next step, take that next action. My dad's favorite saying is, have a plan, you can always change it. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think he actually created that saying. I don't know who to credit for it, but he says it all the time. But he's right, and I live like that too. It's it doesn't have to be that. Oh my God, I'm always taking the exact right action. I'm just taking action.
You're just taking action, and you course correct as you go.
That's right.
How many times does a pilot course correct when they're flying from New York to Los Angeles just to arrive at the destination?
Exactly.
So many times, even just 1 degree.
It's a very good metaphor. It's exactly right. We're always pivoting. We're always trying to. So I guess, when you talk about a career path too, it's like, it might look on paper like, oh, Shannon's, grand plan was like to become the head of HR, or your grand plan to become a speaker and a coach. But that's not always necessarily the case.
Right.
In fact, I think there's very few people. I mean, my mom went to college to become a physical education teacher, and she ended up being very successful in insurance sales. I mean, okay.
And then that's the case for many.
Yeah.
You start off wanting one thing. I wanted to be an actress. Right. That's where I started.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I also believe in taking sort of the good stuff from that, right? Like, so I've said to you before, I think probably your acting experience is very helpful for you in speaking, right? So I like that too, and that's how I view my business now, is taking all the good parts of HR, or the things that I really love to work and do, training, speaking, coaching, and sort of repackaging it in a different way.
I like that, repackaging it, because you learned all these skills, you pick them up, you don't lose them, you can hone them.
Right.
And then it's like, how can I use those skills in this new context that I'm working in?
Right. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on reinvention. They're like, I've got to sell all my belongings, move to the islands, and open up an ice cream shop to make my life different. And really, in a sense, depending on the person, I mean, that can be a real waste of whatever experience. Your experience is like a superpower, right? Like, you have all this experience, even if you've been working for 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it's been. So figure out a way, if you don't like where you are, to kind of repurpose and repackage and then reinvent. But it doesn't have to be this massive. Reinvention can be very subtle, very nuanced, and sort of has to fit you.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. Repurpose, repackage, and reinvent.
Look, we just made
and
that
it can be, you did. Yes, I love the alliteration.
Yeah.
And there's magic in the subtlety and the nuances, like you said.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think it's sort of this thing, when I've struggled in my career before, and you're like, oh, you get sort of this catastrophic thinking, and you're like, everything stinks. Nothing I've done is right, and oh my goodness. But certainly there's always seems to be, when I hear people's stories, a through line. Mm-hmm. There's always something, that you can see, like even sometimes from when they were kids. I mean, I used to, my mother did not like it when I did this, but I would put on shows in the backyard. I remember my magic show in particular, where I started hauling dining room chairs out onto the backyard and charging people. But there was this sense of wanting to teach, or wanting to speak, and wanting to share and show and all of that. And that was like, I might have been 6 years old at the time. So I'm sure you have, similar things where this was always Nikki.
Right. Yeah. It was always there. Definitely the performance. I mean, I had my hairbrushes, my microphone, and putting on a performance in the kitchen for my parents and grandmother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now you hold a microphone on other stages,
That's right. Exactly.
Right.
Like this one.
Yeah. Exactly. And you don't even have to hold the microphone.
That's right.
That's right.
We've come a long way with technology.
We have.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in to True HR Beyond the Office. We hope today's episode inspired new ways for you to find fulfillment and purpose in your personal and professional life. If you found value in our conversation, let's keep it going. Follow us on social media and visit us at ShannonClarkJohnston.com to explore free tools, resources, and more about our speaking, coaching, and consulting services.